The Frozen Arrow is the latest obsession in the Clash of Clans world, but is it better than the long-standing love that we have with the Invisibility Vial? In this video, we're going to compare the stats between the Frozen Arrow and the Invisibility Vial, talk about where and in what situations they're good, and then talk about the easiest and the best strategy to approach upgrading these equipment to get the most out of them. And guys, this video has analysis and testing that has never been seen before, so you definitely want to stick around to get the most out of these tips. But a lot of you are probably thinking that this guide is going to be BS because the equipment is situational and thus you shouldn't stick around and waste your time. I agree that equipment can be situational and it can be preferred in one tech versus the other, but there are general passive stats that apply to the queen, and since we're using the same finite resources to upgrade both pieces of equipment, we should probably think about all the factors, not just attack strategy. I'm also going to be breaking down the attacks for specific attacks and general attacks, so don't worry, everything will be covered. With all of that being said, let's get into the stats analysis and the overall implications of the stats for each equipment. Now, I did tons of stats breakdown on the last video about the Frozen Arrow not being worth maxing, and I'm only going to mention the relevant things for this video. The defensive component of the Frozen Arrow grants an effective DPS reduction that is similar to whatever the slowdown percentage is. Now, the downside to this is that it only applies to one defense at a time, but it also lasts the entire attack. So does this mean that the queen takes 75% less damage as a whole? No, not even close. The queen will often be targeted by multiple defenses at a time, and it's really hard to get an exact number on this. However, I think a good average is 3 defenses attacking the queen, especially during queen charges where she's gonna take a lot of damage. Thus, the 75% DPS reduction would become an effective 25% DPS reduction, but for the entire attack. Now, I know that this is a broad generalization, but it does give us something to compare with and something to work with as we move forward. Now, in the non-queen charge attacks, I think the queen will actually only deal with an average of 2 defenses at a time, since she's usually with other troops, so you'd get a realistic DPS reduction of 37.5%. Now, let's go ahead and compare to the Invisibility Vial. We get 7.8 seconds of no targeting at all, and although the queen can still take damage in this time, this can be controlled pretty well if the player has enough skill. So this ability can grant an effective 100% damage reduction for 7.8 seconds. The results are in the chart here, which takes into account all of the total damage reductions that we would get based on the attack method and then based on how long the attack is. As you can see, the Frozen Arrow gives a much better DPS reduction over time, regardless of if you queen charge or not, so it wins out in this department. This is not to discount the fact that the Invisibility Vial gives you 100% damage reduction though, so this can be really devastating if it is timed properly. But let's not be naive, there is more stats to consider other than the damage reduction, so let's go ahead and break those down as well. Both pieces of equipment also boast a DPS buff to the queen. The maximum passive DPS boost you can get from the Frozen Arrow is 168, which is approximately 22% of the max DPS the queen can achieve anyways. To determine how much damage this is in an attack though, we need to determine how many times the queen shoots in an attack. Again, we'll have to make some assumptions, so I literally watched some clan war attacks from my clan that were triples, and the queen got around 100 attacks whenever there was a queen charge. Obviously, there will be some variance, but let's go ahead and use this number for now. If the queen attacks 100 times, you get 16,800 damage from this ability over time. Now, when it comes to the Invisibility Vial, she gets tons of extra damage per shot, but it only lasts 7.8 seconds. On my testing, I saw that she almost always gets 4 attacks in, but a max of around 6. Thus, if we use 5 as the number of average attacks, you get 8,700 extra damage. So in this comparison, the Frozen Arrow actually wins in terms of the amount of damage done, but remember that the Invisibility Vial is useful for its burst of extra damage. When it comes to the last stat though, the Invisibility Vial wins easily. This is because the Frozen Arrow only has 2 buffs, the DPS reduction from defenses and the extra damage that it does. The Invisibility Vial also grants hit point increase points, and it's huge considering it's about 21.7% of the total HP of the max queen added on. But obviously this isn't a game of stats, so let's go ahead and look at some of the conditions where each of these equipments really shine. For the queen charges, the frozen arrow is really good when you're going against really tough compartments that you normally wouldn't be able to queen charge before. That being said, the invisibility vial can serve as a really good safety net for players learning to queen charge. Thus, if you're confident in your queen charge skills, the frozen arrow seems like a good idea. But if you're still learning, the invisibility vial allows you to get a little bit of a safety net as well as extra HP. When it comes to non-queen charge attacks, both pieces of equipment lose utility, since the invisibility vial will be less significant in a mass of troops, and the freezing will happen less often and less reliably due to all the troops. But one thing to consider is the fact that the invisibility vial mainly benefits the queen alone, while the frozen arrow can slow down defenses that are not targeting the queen and help the entire army. Not to mention that we've already talked about how keeping the queen alive means you get more DPS from the frozen arrow throughout the entire attack. So for non-queen charge attacks, it looks like the frozen arrow provides a lot of good utility and some decent synergy. Speaking of synergy, however, there's one thing that we cannot ignore between the two pieces of equipment. The invisibility vial is a strong piece of equipment, but it synergizes very poorly with all the other pieces of queen equipment. The frozen arrow, on the other hand, works really well with other pieces of equipment since it's just a passive ability, so it wins out in the synergy department 100%. But wait, in the last video, I spent about 9 minutes talking to all of you about how the frozen arrow isn't worth maxing and how you shouldn't be investing that many levels into it, and now I'm saying that it's coming out on top. Am I lying to all of you? Even though it's true that I can be a terrible person at times, there's one caveat that I haven't mentioned that should clear all of this up. It's the fact that a good portion of the benefits of the frozen arrow are achieved by level 9, as I discussed in my last video. This means that even though there's 27 levels in the frozen arrow, a majority of them will get very diminishing returns compared to the amount you're spending on those upgrades. Not to mention that you won't get the HP increase from the frozen arrow, while the Invis Vial gives you a tremendous HP increase. So taking all of the qualitative and the quantitative analysis that we've done, this is what I would recommend for upgrading. If you're learning queen charges, really work on that invisibility vial and then get your frozen arrow up. For non-queen charge players or literally all other players, the frozen arrow does do better in a lot of departments, but a lot of its benefits can easily be seen by level 9, so get it to that level and then focus on your invisibility vial. This includes players who are using the healing or the archer puppet as well. The frozen arrow synergizes a lot better, so I would at least get that to level 9 first. And don't overthink it. If you're not going to use the queen charge or the invisibility vial at all, you don't need to invest levels into that piece of equipment, because investing levels into a piece of equipment that you won't use or will rarely use is surely a waste of your resources. But I caution you as well, don't waste resources over upgrading the frozen arrow. And if you don't know why that's the case, then a lot of the advice in this video probably doesn't make sense to you. That's why you need to watch this video right here to learn how the frozen arrow holds up when we test it in different scenarios.